Before the Rings of Power, there were the Silmarils. Before Sauron, there was his master Morgoth. Before Aragorn and Arwen, there was Beren and Luthien. Join us as we explore Tolkien and all the ages of Middle-earth with your hosts from theonering.com, Jonathan Watson and Michael Grumbine.
Here in the United States, the government might be shut down. Things might not be working, but exploring Tolkien never shuts down.
That's right. We have no respect whatsoever for whether there's a budget or not.
No, that's right. That's right. Our budget is infinitely zero. I mean, just a little bit more than infinitely zero. But yes, guys, we're not shut down. I say that because this podcast is coming out a little bit late. I was on a family vacation. We spent a few days in Washington, D.C., and you might be saying, if you're listening to this in a timely fashion in the fall of 2025, but the government was shut down. What were you doing in D.C.? Well, here's the funny thing. We got there, and the government shut down 4 days after we got there. Perfect, because we were leaving on that fourth day and weren't even going to hang around. And so we got to do everything there. We got to do all the monuments. We got to tour the Capitol, go through all the buildings, saw Mike Johnson's office, or the Speaker of the House's office. We got to do the Library of Congress, the National Archives, a bunch of the museums. And even the last day, we went to Arlington National Cemetery. Now, that was impressive. We got to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and watched. We were there for probably an hour and a half just watching, and then watched the transition of the guards. That was impressive. But now you can't do any of that right now. Well, maybe you can do the museum still, but I don't know. All the rest is like, because some of these museums were open like a week later after the shutdown. I'm not sure exactly why.
Oh, I thought the museums all shut down.
But they might be shut down now because they said they were open till like October 6th or 7th, and I haven't checked back since.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah. So sorry for this being a bit tardy when it comes out. We're recording this late since I only got back this weekend. And
not sorry.
Sorry. Not sorry. No, I'm not sorry. It was a good trip.
He's not sorry.
No, I know. DC is pretty cool. I mean, I wouldn't want to live there, but seeing things
no, you would not. As someone who has indeed lived
there.
Well, technically, I lived on the edges. On either edge, I lived in both Maryland and in Virginia while I was going to school in DC.
Yeah. We rented a really tiny house right on in Maryland, Capitol Heights, I think it was called. Does that sound right? I think so.
Capitol Heights is indeed a town in Maryland on the border. I lived in Hyattsville.
Okay. Yeah, it was a good trip. But now it's all shut down. Nobody can ever go there again. So we're here instead talking Tolkien.
Talking about Bilbo's dubious character.
Bilbo's, is it dubious? Is it honest? Or is it duplicitous?
And what does Tolkien think it is? Which
all
is
right. Well, we're going to get into that. Before we do, I do want to say thank you to our supporters and an MVP. Now we've got Colt coming in as an MVP this month. That was awesome. Thank you, Colt, for that support. That goes a long way. StreamYard keeps raising their prices. This is what we use to record and to stream and do all that sort of stuff. And so all that support goes a long way. And the one thing Michael and I do share a love of is cigars, and so this does go to enjoy those a little bit more sometimes too, and we have a little bit left over. So I wish we could do this on here, but we both record in a house, and I don't think we're going to be smoking those cigars in a house.
No, I'm not going to be recording cigars, but on our live stream we do sometimes. We
do, yeah, and we'll be having one, I believe, next week or in 2 weeks from essentially from the time this comes out. That'll be in the end of October. And if you want to join that, you can become a member at theonering.com/member. It's only $4 a month. Or if you want to be an MVP or a sponsor like Colt, Lynn, and Rich, you can do that too. And go to theonering.com/member, become a member. And then also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review on Spotify. Anywhere you listen to this, give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star, whatever helps, whatever gets more folks listening. Because what we like to do is dive deep into Tolkien, and your support and the amounts of listeners. We do get thousands of listeners every month, and so we do want this to go further and wider because we really do enjoy it. It's a cathartic thing for me every time we get together and talk Tolkien. It's really nice.
Labor of love. Get to talk about something we love.
That's right. So something we love to do is to get into Hobbit facts.
Hobbit facts.
Okay, so this chapter here, bam, that chapter right there that you see on your screen, A Thief in the Night, chapter 16 of The Hobbit, was originally titled, did you know it was originally not titled A Thief in the Night? it was originally titled Divided Loyalties, which is quite a different take on what you would want to name this chapter, because it's giving it a certain flavor that it might not necessarily have. Something we'll get into, but I thought that was interesting that he originally called it Divided Loyalties, not A Thief in the Night.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And then so as we jump into this chapter, I do want to, if you bought the History of the Hobbit, which, by the way, I didn't post or tweet or anything like that because I was on vacation, but if you had a Kindle, they had it on sale for $1.99. And normally this book is like $50 if you want to buy the hardback version. So you could have bought it for $1.99 on your Kindle. But the original version of this chapter, where Bilbo steals away from the dwarves to bring the Arkenstone to the elves and the Lakemen, was very, very different. And so I'm going to read directly from the History of the Hobbit to kind of give you a taste of where he was trying to figure out. You can tell he was trying to figure out what's the best way to get Bilbo away from the Lonely Mountain. And this was his original attempt at what that might look like.
All right.
Here we go. So let's see, he comes up to Bomber and Bomber says to him, "But I am bound here until midnight," grumbled Bomber. "A sorry business altogether. Not that I say a word against Thorin, may his beard ever grow longer. Yet he was ever a dwarf with a stiff neck, or a dwarf stiff in the neck." "My eyes are sharp," said Bilbo, "and it is long since I did watch." "Let us sing songs to cheer it up," said Bilbo. "Singing is thirsty work and calls for more than water," said Bomber. "I will sing to you," said Bilbo. And he began to sing in his small voice an absurd song, one that used to be sung to him long ago in the green of the world when he was a small hobbit in a little bed in his father's hole. So kind of a lullaby, which I don't think we have any Tolkien lullabies. Would have been interesting. And then the editor of History of the Hobbit writes, "At this point, all but the first paragraph on this page was canceled, after which the drafting continued." And then... So this is kind of, it's like a break, and Tolkien was figuring out what to do next. And he writes this: "Not as stiff as my legs," said Bilbo. "I am tired of stairs and stone passages. I will be going to bed, I think." Bomber gave a shiver and a sneeze. "Stay here a moment," he begged. "I will fetch us another cloak and some wraps against the east wind. There is no need to freeze at one's post." No sooner had Bomber gone than Bilbo fastened on his ring and secured a rope and slipped over the wall and was gone. "Confound that hobbit," said Bomber when he returned. What Thorin would say if he knew the watch were broken, I don't know. But in the dark, he did not see the rope, and it was not until morning." And that's where it ends. Anyway, he didn't know exactly how he was going to do this. He had them like maybe they were going to get together and have a good time and sing songs, or maybe they were going to, he was just going to essentially abandon, like go up to Bomber, and then when Bomber steps away to get a cloak, he'll just leave, and Bomber's like, "Oh, drat, what am I going to do? I can't tell Thorin because he's a stiff-necked dwarf and he'll get angry." And so this way was better. I mean, he had the ring, which oddly the movies never use at all when he escapes from the mountain.
Yeah, that was very weird. I don't know why.
It's just, and it's not even, Bomber's not even the one there. It's Beaufort at this point. Does Bomber even talk in the movie? I don't know if
he does a couple times.
Barely. But he never uses the ring. And it's what's weird in the movie, like the movie, I don't know. Anyway, to get into the movie, like, so this is the Hobbit fact here is that he was trying to figure out how to get Bilbo away from the dwarves. It was something that was sticking with him for a while. I don't know how much time was in between these different drafts or his attempts, or like if it was just, a half an hour or a week or something like that. But he was trying to figure out how to do it. And I think we landed on actually a very appropriately good way in order to handle the situation of him trying to get the Arkenstone to the dwarves, or to the elves and the Lake Town men.
Right. Because the method that he chose, the dwarves have no clue what he's done.
Right.
Until it's revealed in the following chapter.
Right. What's really weird too in the films, I don't know if you remember this here, because I had to go back and remind myself, what did the films do?
Nope. Whatever you're about to say, I don't remember it.
It's not Bomber. It's Beaufort who's there.
Okay.
And they have this little discussion about Thorin and a little discussion about the future and the things they miss. And clearly, Beaufort understands that Bilbo's about to leave, and he sort of is encouraging him to go and to do the right thing. And he'll turn a blind eye because he even says, he looks at him and says, "Goodbye, Mr. Baggins." And then let's sort of just walks away down the stairs. Just like, what happened there? They really just their ability to screw up the simpler story of Tolkien, where they did a much better job with a more complex Lord of the Rings, was always shocking to me. This is another one of those scenes where they really just screwed it up. So, okay, let's forget the films because we enjoy the books more. Let's do a quick recap, if you can, Michael, of this chapter, A Thief in the Night, formerly called Divided Loyalties. And by the way, we're going to finish this in the next 3 episodes, I think, because we got 3 chapters left.
Yep.
So we're good. Although maybe here, hey, this just struck me that should we do the scene between Thorin? What I can't remember what it's called in Unfinished Tales, between Thorin and Gandalf at the Prancing Pony. From Unfinished Tales. We've never really to dive into that after having the Hobbit fresh might be really good. I think we should do that. So I think we'll do that after the Hobbit. All right.
Or at least, if not in a main episode, at least in a subscriber episode, but maybe a main episode. I can't remember how long it is. Is it long enough for a main episode?
I don't know. I'd have to check. You go ahead and recap this here. I'm going to check real fast and I'll let everybody know.
All right. So this is a fairly straightforward chapter, but basically the chapter begins with Thorin desperately searching for the Arkenstone and nobody finding it, and Thorin even threatening anyone who dares to find it and not hand it over, which makes Bilbo feel great. I'm being sarcastic there. And Bilbo, it turns out, is using the Arkenstone in the middle of his makeshift pillow. So he's been sleeping on the Arkenstone, which is kind of funny. Roak comes back with news that there are 500 doughty dwarves on their way from the Iron Hills, led by Dane, and that they'll come in from the northeast. So they're gonna basically have to encounter the people camping out before the people that are besieging, if you want to call it that, Erebor, before they get to the dwarves. But this is good news to Thorin. It is bad news to Roak, who wishes to avoid battle and war. And Bilbo is of Roak's mind, same mind. And he comes up with a plan. And then the scene happens with Bomber that you described, except instead of singing him a song, which, by the way, I love the fact that you read that, because that just means that I'm going to count that as in there's a song in this chapter too, even though it never made it into the.
I agree.
It counts. So we're.
His intention was to have a song.
Tolkien's record remains virtually unbroken on having a song in every chapter, or remnants of a song, or news of a song. The singing is endless with Tolkien. So. He makes Bomber, who is no stoic dwarf in the first place. He makes Bomber crave sleep and warmth, and offers to replace him as the watchman. Bomber happily trundles off, and Bilbo happily slips over the edge with the rope and his magic ring. He tries to sneak into the camp. As we find out when he's caught, we find out that it's Bard that he's looking for, and however, he slips and falls in the river, which is quite a hurdle for a small hobbit to get through. So he slips and falls on the stones, and with the splash, the elves hear him, and so he removes the ring and tells them he wants to go see Bard. And what's funny is they do mention that there's a hobbit creature with the dwarves, so that they're already aware that there's Bilbo, that Bilbo is there, and that he's a slippery fellow. So now comes the main part of the chapter where Bilbo talks with both Bard and the Elvenking, along with a group of people in a tent, and lays out for them what's happening. They don't know yet about Dane, so he tells them about that. There's a tough moment, because upon revealing that Dane is coming, we have a very funny, not ha-ha funny, but interesting interlude by Bard, who gets angry with Bilbo for being a traitor to his by revealing the oncoming army, which would be by Bilbo's essentially potentially saved lives of the men of Lake Town. But Bard's angry because it shows that Bilbo's a traitor. And Bilbo calls Bard hasty, and then in slightly different words, and then Bilbo makes his offer, and they want to hear what the offer is, and the offer is, here's the Arkenstone. You can have it as a bargaining tool with the dwarves, and maybe things will go well, and you'll be able to get out of this without battle. And an interesting question is asked, which is, do you have the right to give the Arkenstone?
Right.
And Bilbo hems and haws and says, well, he's owed 1/14 of the share of the profits, and he's very particular about its profits. So this will count against his 1/14 share of the treasure of the mountain. At which point, everyone flips and is all patting him on the back and gazing at him in wonder, and
calling him better than a prince.
Way out. Turns out Gandalf's hiding there, watching everything, and Gandalf is happy with him and what he's done. So apparently, this is a good thing to everyone. And they now have the Arkenstone, and Bilbo trundles his way back to the Watch, makes it there before he had to wake up Bomber. So the dwarves are none the wiser that he has stepped out. And that's the end of the chapter.
I mean, it's sort of the, I think there aren't so many little things. There's some big things to talk about in this chapter. And I think the first place to go, and unless you have something first to talk about, is like, why does Bilbo leave the dwarves? What is the crux? What is the moment? What is the additional weight on the scales of his decision that pushes him to leaving the dwarves in order to try and solve this problem in front of him, where of essentially he doesn't want to be starved out in the mountain with the dwarves? But is it that? Is it?
I don't think so. I think it's just so there's a straw that breaks the camel's back, and that comes immediately after Thorin rejects Roak's advice and pleas for peace, and Thorin makes it clear that he's going to have war and get these, or at least suffering, and get these interlopers off his mountain, either from Winter or from his dwarf cousins, or both. And Thorin has basically declared, so my opinion is Thorin has declared that he will not bend, and blood will have to be spilt in one way or another for there to be a resolution, and blood between good people, the good peoples. And I think that's what finally tips it for Bilbo, because it says, these are the words of Thorin, the last words of Thorin: with my friends behind them and Winter upon them, they will perhaps be in a softer mood to parley with. That night, Bilbo made up his mind. So that's the next line. So I think you have Bilbo's already dismayed by the gold sickness, so to speak, of Thorin, and by his unbending and unreasonable demands and attitude towards the people that have come upon him. Now that he, through no merit of his own, we might add, no merit whatsoever of Thorin's own, has he received his treasure back. Everything that was done, from the planning to the execution of Smaug, was done by other people. So the dwarves had no hand in it. Dwarves didn't even get themselves the mountain. Gandalf did. Gandalf was the one that gathered them in the beginning. Dwarves are basically useless. So Thorin has no merit, at least in my mind. And so I think Bilbo's beginning to get there.
I think, okay, so in a phrase, then, you think it's because, give me, I know this is hard, give me a brief sentence that says this is why Bilbo's leaving.
I think Bilbo is finally tipped over by Thorin's unbending nature, where he refuses to have peace, even when his friends, Roak, for example, the Ravens, counsel it. And so that's the final straw for Bilbo. And I think we see that in his reasoning that he gives to Bard and the Elvenking, but we'll get there.
Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of a converse
Good
viewpoint, a little bit, because I don't think it's 100% just like one of these things, right? There is a snowball effect, we could say.
Wait. Let me guess. Do you think it's the bacon and eggs?
I think it's a huge
the last
the last
lines of
line
the chapter.
absolutely 100%, because not only is it that, not only is the food, right? It's the comforts of home. It's when Roak says, though they are grim folk, they are not likely to overcome the host that besets you. And even if they did so, what will you gain? Winter and snow is hastening behind them. How shall you be fed without the friendship and goodwill of the lands about you? Remember, the dwarves they did not have gardens in their great halls of stone like you saw in the Rings of Power. They were reliant on trading for all their food, for all their foodstuffs, for all their sustenance. And Roak says, the treasure is likely to be your death, though the dragon is no more. And so the first thing Bilbo does is, one, he does make up his mind after this whole speech. And yeah, you're right that the last thing he says is, with my friends behind him, the last thing Thorin says is that, he's willing to stay the course there. But what Bilbo does is he goes to Bomber, and the first thing he says to Bomber is, I would give a good deal for the feel of grass at my toes. And then Bomber says, I would give a good deal for the feel of a strong drink in my throat and for a soft bed and support. Even then, he's thinking about the comforts of home. He's thinking about, how do I get back home? And then at the end, right, like you said.
Wait, was that Bomber or Bilbo that said the comforts of the strong drink?
Well, he said, Bilbo said, that Bomber said that, but Bilbo said the grass between his feet, right?
Right.
And then at the end, it is, the last line is like, when he was fast asleep, forgetting all his worries till the morning after he had gone back into the mountain. As a matter of fact, he was dreaming of eggs and bacon. And I think because there is he sees the wheels turning now, to like there's some hope for him, and so the first thing that comes into his mind, there's some hope for him for escape from the mountain. The first thing that comes into his mind isn't that he's avoiding battle, isn't that he's going to survive, even though I love that Gandalf says you may survive. No.
May.
Right?
Tolkien gives emphasis to that word "may" as well. Yeah, at least in this version, it's italicized. You may survive.
But the first thing he dreams of is
bacon and
eggs. It's the comforts of home. And so I think the realization that it may actually not, if he doesn't do anything, he may not ever get back home again. And I mean, that's a through line through the entire book, right? That's what screws his scourge to the sticking place, is when he wants to actually do something to move the dwarves forward, is because he wants to get back home. Anyway,
so I agree with that. I do think we have to distinguish between an active reasons for choice versus passive. I think there's always, for Bilbo, behind everything is the desire to get home. But I guess you could say that Thorin's chosen path that makes it less likely for Bilbo to get home, but he doesn't ever say that. And what he does say, when it comes to the discussion between the elves, if it's not inappropriate to
skip forward, go ahead. We're discussing.
Skip forward.
Because the big part, just to say, the big part is Bilbo's decision, and then why does he give them the Arkenstone? I think that's what we're going to be focusing on this episode, is like, what is the primary reasoning? Like, anyway, go on.
Yes. So he says, this is the Arkenstone of Thrain, said Bilbo, the heart of the mountain, and it is also the heart of Thorin. He values it above a river of gold. And that's not Bilbo making those words up. Those were literally the words of Thorin at the beginning of this chapter, that he values it above a river of gold. I give it to you. It will aid you in your bargaining. Then Bilbo, not without a shudder, not without a glance of longing, handed the marvelous stone to Bard, and he held it in his hand as though dazed. So he's given it to them explicitly to help them in their bargaining. Why would he give up basically his entire share to help them in their bargaining? Now you can say because he wants to get home, but if that was the case, then why wouldn't he just join them and say, like, I'm here, I need to get home, here's, a piece of the treasure or whatever. Mm-hmm. But he goes back to the dwarves. So I can't believe that the primary motivation is just simply a desire to get home. Bilbo has a number of motivations, but I think what the bargaining will do, first and foremost, the bargaining chip that he's given to them, it's more than a chip, it's a river of gold. It will allow, the best chance anyway, for a successful parlay and an avoidance of battle between the free folk, between men, elves, and dwarves. And remember, Bilbo doesn't know anything about the goblins yet, so he can't be like, you have we have to do this so that we can be always. No, he just wants them to avoid this siege and battle. If it was simply to go home, he would have used it as a bargaining chip to go home and wouldn't have gone back. Because one of the things that's most amazing to me, like it's a very sort of noble English thing to do, is upon giving them this invaluable treasure, he then goes back to face his fate with the dwarves, knowing that it's very likely that the dwarves will discover what he's done, as indeed they do the next chapter. So if he's willing to go back and basically face the wrath of Thorin, maybe death for what he's done, then it can't simply be that his overweening desires just to get home.
Right. Okay. Okay, Michael, you've convinced me a little bit. But I want to say that I think it's Gandalf calls him loyal, right?
Peace.
He wants peace, but Gandalf does call him loyal to a fault, right? So that he's loyal to the dwarves still, even though they've treated him like crap for so many of the days of their journey. His desire is to be loyal, but also to bring himself back home eventually. And so I think that's something that he is a little bit at war between him. I feel like the interesting question is, if push came to shove, what would he do more? Would he want to go home more, or would he want to stay with the dwarves more as a person, as a loyal person? It might be a false equivalence.
They even offer for him to stay in the camp. Like he could, with the elves and the men's help, he could get back, or at least
you're right.
Best chance of getting back home seems that. So he desires his loyalty to his friends, his dwarvish friends, who, by the way, don't deserve his friendship.
I know. I agree.
And so his loyalty to his friends he values more than getting home, and peace between the peoples he values more than getting home. I do think that getting home is a third place, and his subconscious is all about that. His subconscious is all about the getting home and the comforts of home, which is why he's dreaming about eggs and bacon. But anyway, that's my story.
Sticking by
see what happens.
I agree. No, I think you're mostly right. I think there is a desire, like you said, for peace, but also there are the moments where Thorin has shown him respect and has valued him. And I think that he doesn't want to be devalued in that way either by Thorin. And there's a, because Gandalf didn't bring Bilbo in to be just a burglar. I think also because his loyalties were more towards the people, not towards the gold. It was towards his home, not towards a plot of land far away. And so his desire to see this through would be even greater in a sense than the dwarves, because he had to get back home. He had to remain the hobbit rather than become the greedy dwarf. And I think he knew that Gandalf knew that Bilbo would stay that character regardless, whereas Thorin did change. Thorin became enamored, right? He had his, whether by by both the dragon and by the dwarven heart, became a slightly different character here at the end of the books.
Yeah, I'm afraid he became a character that all dwarves can become. It's not so much a change in nature as it was
simply accelerated by the
change in disposition based on circumstance.
Yeah, well, and accelerated as he mentions by it being a dragon's horde.
Correct.
As well.
Yep, definitely some enchantment there. So, okay, so now let's get to the heart of the question.
Do you mean the heart of the mountain of the question?
There is an indication in the text that he may or may not have the ability to give what he's giving. And if he doesn't have the ability to give it, then it's given unjustly.
By it, you mean the Arkenstone?
The Arkenstone, yes. So when he offers it, right after the passage that I read before, Bard asks him, "But how is it yours to give?" And the Hobbit says, oh, well, I'm just going to do it the way I read it in my mind. "Oh, well," said the Hobbit uncomfortably, "it isn't exactly. But, well, I am willing to let it stand against all my claim, don't you know? I may be a burglar, or so they say. Personally, I never really felt like one. But I am an honest one, I hope, more or less. Anyway, I'm going back now, and the dwarves can do what they like to me. I hope you will find it useful." Okay, so I say that the Hobbit is admitting that it isn't his to give so much. And if you think about it, one of the counter arguments could be, well, it's worth his full share. Basically, it's been intimated before that basically this is like it's worth the what he's owed is the Arkenstone, or roughly. But that doesn't actually give him a right to take it. It's still Thorin's. It belongs to Thorin. And just because, let's say somebody owes me $10,000 for a job that I did, that doesn't give me the right to go to their house at night and take their car that's worth $10,000 and drive away with it and just say our debt is paid.
I 100% agree with that.
So even if it's worth his share of the treasure, which is debatable, in other words, it might be worth a lot more than his share of the treasure.
And in Thorin's mind, it certainly is.
In Thorin's mind, it is, but that's a different thing. There's a sense of value which isn't just about when it comes to things that can be traded for money. Usually, the value of a thing isn't based solely on one person's opinion. In other words, the other dwarves don't seem to share Thorin's obsession with it, and probably wouldn't value it quite as much as Thorin. But anyway. Be that as it may, it seems clear that Bilbo is recognizing here that it's not really his to give. So my first inclination when I read this was, well, Tolkien's telling us that Bilbo's doing something unjust here. He's taking what isn't his and giving it to other people. He has a kind of excuse, which is counted against what I'm owed, which, okay, that lessens it a little bit in one sense. But then I come to the indisputable fact that the man who has shown himself to be most prickly about honor and virtue, which is Bard in this whole situation, himself accepts this gift. And the Elvenking now tells Bilbo directly, "You are more worthy to wear the armor of elf princes," because Bilbo has on the shirt, the mithril coat, "than many that have looked more comely in it. But I wonder if Thorin Oakenshield will see it so. I have more knowledge of dwarves in general than you have, perhaps. I advise you to remain with us, and here you shall be honored and thrice welcome." So the Elvenking thinks that he's due honor for this.
Right.
And that he has grown in worth by offering this. So the question would become, is it because of the value of the Arkenstone, or is it because of the value of his desire for peace, in my mind? Or a combination of the two. So, and then Gandalf says to him, "Well done, Mr. Baggins," he said, clapping Bilbo on the back. "There is always more about you than anyone expects." So that's Gandalf's first line to him. So apparently what he's done is well done, according to Gandalf. So now I'm left with the opinion that Tolkien thinks that it was okay. So then the question becomes, how is it okay for him to take what isn't his? And I understand in the modern world, whenever we're faced, it seems to be the vibe of the time, that whenever we're faced with a character like Thorin, who's arrogant and greedy, we somehow think that means that it's okay to steal from him or do things bad to him because their arrogance and their greed.
Yeah,
that's not the way justice
deserves
works.
To be screwed over.
Yeah, it's not the way justice works. Right. Just because someone's arrogant doesn't mean it's okay to steal from them.
Right.
And so that raises for me the question of, I think I'm left with the impression that Tolkien thinks that Bilbo did the right thing, but it was still not his to give. So how can it possibly be the right thing to do for Tolkien, for Bilbo to do this, when the Arkenstone wasn't his to give?
There's an old saying that says, two wrongs can make a right.
I thought you were going to say possession is 9/10 of the law.
that too.
That would have been a better one.
You're right. It is it is puzzling. I like how you brought in even Gandalf at the end. He says that he's done essentially a good thing. You may come through all right, right? Your things are moving forward in a positive way, and Bilbo took what Thorin expressly wanted,
and which was Thorin's. It wasn't just that Thorin wanted it, but
yes,
it
right.
belongs to Thorin.
It belongs to Thorin, and it's I don't know. I read some commentary. I think this is Corey Olsen. You know, Corey Olsen is the Tolkien professor.
Yes, the Tolkien
he
professor.
says that let me see if I have the quote here that I got.
This is in his book on the Hobbit.
Yeah. Standing at the end of Bilbo's career arc, this is him talking, we can see a remarkable thing as Bilbo has been changed by his experiences. He's come to fit more and more neatly the burglar label that Gandalf's own probably placed on him in Chapter 1. In the process, however, he has not been fundamentally changed. Rather, he has transformed the role of burglar itself to fit the values of his Baggins world, taking the job in a quite unexpected direction. The description honest burglar sounds like an oxymoron, but it fits Bilbo. An honest burglar may be something new, but then so is a respectable Baggins wearing elvish armor, or a thief sneaking out by night in order to give away the wealth of nations. He never deals with the fact that he is taking something not his own, that he is...
Yeah, I've met the Tolkien professor. I like him as a person. I think his analysis is incorrect here because he does a typically modern thing where he's equating the fact that just because an honest burglar is a weird thing and Bilbo's done a weird thing, then that makes it all okay. So he's transformed oh no, you don't get to transform the nature of right and wrong just because you've become you decided you're an honest burglar. And by the way, let's remind all of our listeners, the reason he's a burglar and he was called a burglar is because his job was to go take things from under the dragon's nose. But that's a burglar by equivocation only. A burglar, generally speaking, is someone that takes what isn't theirs from the house of somebody that owns it. The treasure is not the dragons. The treasure is the dwarves. Right. if you go back, if a thief comes to your house and steals your money, and then you send somebody else to go take it back from the thief in their house, you haven't you haven't done anything wrong. There's been nothing dishonest about that burglaring. Now you can say the burglaring is the act of taking unsuspectingly from somebody. Okay, fine, whatever. But the reality is, the question is whether it's just or unjust, and it is utterly just to steal something from a dragon who's taken it from other people on behalf of the person that he's taken it from, or the people he's taken it from. But it is not just to take and give something that is not his. I mean, it's the very treasure that his job was to take, like his contract was,
and to give it to the dwarves,
treasure and give it back to the dwarves, and now he has the greatest of those treasures, and he chooses to not give it back to dwarves. So actually, I think that Corey Olsen's Dr. Olsen's desire to simply say, well, he's transformed it because he's been transformed. So now the nature of right and wrong is transformed. No, it doesn't work that way.
And again, and I think it's important to point out that Tolkien isn't making a statement about right and wrong here. He's not trying to.
Well, he's hinting about things.
No, he's writing a story, and his point was not to be didactic in his story to us about
that's true.
The right way of doing things in life, right? Is there a greater good here that Bilbo is trying to meet? Certainly. He is certainly trying to avoid a war that will kill thousands, right? There are trade-offs you can make, and maybe for him this was the right trade-off, but he is not fulfilling his duty as the burglar he was intended to be. But he's becoming more comfortable in his burgling because he's already done it a couple of times from the.
Definitely agree with that. Now I do have a reason. I can actually defend Bilbo's action, and probably our listeners will find my logic a little torturous, but nevertheless.
Okay, that's nothing new. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. No. So I do actually think Bilbo did the right thing after having made the argument that he did the wrong thing. Here's why. As was stated in the previous chapter, when the dwarves confront the heralds of Bard, they confront Bard and the heralds of the Witch King. of the Witch King. Wow, that's terrible. Of the Elf King, not the Witch King, different king. Bard points out that something is owed him for, or intimates it, that something's owed him as the slayer of the dragon. Mm-hmm. And that is actually a valid principle of justice, especially in feudal societies and ancient societies. And for the Americans among us, a good parallel is in the Old West, 19th century. The reason why it was okay to take the law into your own hands in the face of violence and evil in the Midwest, in the Old West, at times, depending on how you did it, was because the law, justice was unable to be served without people directly taking that into their own hands, because there was an insufficient structure of justice, of overarching justice, like we have nowadays, a police force and an army and things like that, whose job and courts, whose job it was to see to justice. So the people had to sometimes do it. Those people, I say, are Bilbo. So Bard is owed something. He's owed a tremendous amount, in fact, he is literally the person that gave the dwarves their treasure back by slaying the dragon. Mm-hmm. So he is owed something from them for that. And not just out of kindness, but out of due, like they owe it. That's an old law. If he slays the monster, then you owe him great honor and recompense. Mm-hmm. So Bilbo's just the agent of that. That's my claim. Bilbo knows I think Bilbo knows that's why he gives it to Bard. He doesn't just give it, like, say, here it is, like divide it up, Elvenking and Bard, and decide what you want to do. He actually hands it to Bard. So my argument is Thorin and the dwarves owe Bard a tremendous debt, and the Arkenstone is the payment for that debt, at least in part, and because they would have nothing without Bard. And so Bilbo is just the agent of that. So he's delivering he's the posse delivering justice except in a non-bloody way in this particular story. So I think there's it's kind of like the rite of conquest when it comes to great evils like a monster like Smaug. I think there is something owed, and I think Bard is owed to Bard. So there's my argument. Yeah. I don't know if it works or not.
I mean, I think it works, but the argument is it's the freaking Arkenstone. It's the one thing he wanted. It's not the gold, and it's not the one thing that Bard even really necessarily wants. But it
might be bargained for what Bard does.
Might be bargained for, yeah.
And what Bard is owed.
So, what do you make of the Elvenking then being so adamant that he is worthy to wear the armor of elf princes, more worthy to wear the armor of elf princes than many that have looked more comely in it? Is it his desire? It the beauty of the Arkenstone that just speaks to him so
We're
deeply?
Already told that the elves love gems.
Yes, right. I agree.
So they have, like, above all things, the Elf King loves gems, and we're going to have another reference to it before the book ends. So there's so I think the Arkenstone is of even more value in the Elvenking's mind than anyone else in that room. And so when Bilbo willingly gives it up, that's the Elven King is shocked at his nobility, so to speak, because he's given up the item of greatest value.
Well, and what's interesting is, like, real fast, like the Arkenstone was originally inspired by the Naglfring or Nauglamir. And so that's how many dwarves and elves were killed over that one gem, and he sees it now being given willingly. And if that was something in Tolkien said, that'd be like, oh, all of a sudden I don't have to go through all this death and destruction. That's
a good point. That's especially a good point, especially because what are the elves and dwarves' relationship to all these? I mean, we even see it with the Silmarils, as you and I discussed, which we think the Arkenstone is kind of a parallel to the Silmarils, maybe even crafted with some of the same power and craft. So the relationship to the Nauglamir and to gems of that power and type that emit their own light, and that is always taking and claiming. All the dwarves, all the elves are always taking and claiming. They're never giving it up. No one ever gives it up, ever. Yeah. And I mean, I guess you could say, in despair, they threw it into a crevice and into the ocean. That's
when there was nothing. When they knew they wouldn't survive it, nothing will survive. I'm taking it with me.
That's more like self-preservation, or suicidal tendencies. So yeah, I think this is a thing that is not done, and I think that's really great that you point that out, because I like that, because it also provides an early foreshadowing of the kind of thing that Frodo will do. So hobbits will do a thing that no other race can do.
That's a good
which
point.
is they can bear temptation longer and more lightly than anyone else, and give it up. Now, ultimately, as we know, Frodo doesn't. Frodo fails in the end, and it takes Providence through Gollum to work. But he gets it. But nobody else could have got
it further. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so for Providence to take over at that point. So anyway,
yeah, okay,
that's a cool. I like the parallel.
It was that line where he says, "I have more knowledge of dwarves in general than you, perhaps." Well, yes, you do.
He does.
Although I would probably agree with your opinion of them now at this point, after reading through The Hobbit and getting through all the details and realizing how little they value their companion that they brought with them the whole time, until they absolutely need him because they're worthless planners and executors of actual revenge.
And not just the planners; they're worthless. Like the fact that they would do, like, their loyalty to each other is fine. Their loyalty to Bilbo is mostly fine. I mean, they do save his life a couple points, but mostly he saves theirs.
Yeah.
But they don't even have any loyalty to the people that gave them a succor when they were in need and dying and starving and anyway, it's
everything's an obstacle in the path to get back to the mountain.
And then the effect that wealth has on them, where they just hold their own possession of it above every other principle, is not praiseworthy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, let's read Gandalf's last line, because all of a sudden he reappears after being gone since entering.
Ta-da! Gandalf.
Like, hey, Gandalf, where'd you come from? This is what Gandalf told him as he comes up to him, puts his hand on his shoulder, and claps Bilbo on the back, and he says, "Well done, Mr. Baggins. There is always more about you than anyone expects." For the first time for many a day, Bilbo was really delighted, but there was no time for all the questions that he immediately wished to ask. "All in good time," said Gandalf. "Things are drawing towards the end now, unless I am mistaken. There is an unpleasant time just in front of you, but keep your heart up. You may come through all right. There is news brewing that even the ravens have not heard. Good night," which I think is a foreshadowing of goblins. Yes. But I just love that he comes in, throws this whole like, "Hey, I'm here to help, but you might be screwed" kind of attitude into the story, where you're like, "Oh no, wait, what's going to happen now?" It just his character is there's still this playfulness to Gandalf that everybody really loves, and I think he just draws it out in that one sentence or those two sentences that we have here at the end of this chapter.
Yeah, after opposing Dr. Olson's take on this, I will agree with him that hobbitry, he calls in his podcast, he calls the hobbitish sense of humor that Gandalf is very good at, the banter back and forth. He calls it hobbitry, and Gandalf does know how to employ looking at bad situations with a kind of ironic light, which is hobbits tend to like. Because it says right after the line you read, it says, "Puzzled but cheered, Bilbo hurried on."
Yes.
So hey, it worked.
It's exactly what he was supposed to do.
Exactly.
Puzzle you up and cheer you up.
Exactly right.
All right. Is anything else left to talk into this chapter, guys? Because next week we're getting into the bursting of the clouds. Final 3.
Right. The clouds were gathering the chapter before this one, and now they're bursting the chapter after this one. But nope, I got nothing else. All right. I think we covered it.
Well, we're going to get into our extended podcast. Here's what we're going to do in our extended podcast, kind of have a slightly different discussion. We're going to talk about what's the best way to read The Hobbit. Is it as something Tolkien wrote before the Third Age of Middle-earth was fleshed out at all, really? Or is it something to be read as part of that entire historical Middle Age, Third Age of Middle... I can't say it. Third Age of Middle-earth, in order to give us a better view of it, because I don't know if either way is the best way by default to read. Anyway, I'm going back and forth. So Michael and I were going to discuss it. We're going to figure out, like, is there a good way? Which way is more satisfying? Which way should we approach it when we read it? As part of Middle-earth, or as something Tolkien was writing that wasn't originally part of Middle-earth and then grew into it in the telling?
So if you want to join us, you have to stop being a freeloader. And you
got to become a subscriber. or an MVP or a sponsor. TheOneRing.com/member, everybody. We'll see you on the other side.
Be like Colt. Bye-bye.